in a few days' time, the US state of Iowa will begin the process of nominating a Republican candidate for November's presidential election. Two hopefuls, Nikki Haley and the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, have gone on the offensive in a TV debate, attacking each other and the frontrunner, former President Donald Trump. Both are trailing Trump by a wide margin. Trump held his own separate television town hall event, basking in the glow of a friendly audience. Well, Boris Foreman joins me now. He's a specialist in US politics and a professor at Bard College in Berlin. Boris, great to have you on the show. So is there still a chance that someone could actually beat the former president to clinch the Republican nomination?
Well, there is a theoretical chance. I think there's even a practical chance, but the window is very small. We have the Iowa caucus coming up in a few days. The New Hampshire primary will be very decisive because this is where, since Chris Christie dropped out of the race, Nikki Haley might gather some momentum, and it might even be a tight race. So it depends very much on these early primaries. Trump will try to paint a picture where he is leading with wide margins and is basically inevitable as a candidate. And the longer the race drags on, the smaller the chances will be for Haley to compete with him. I think Ron DeSantis is practically, the pressure will be very high and he's practically out of the race.
All right, well, if the next election were to be Biden against Trump all over again, what do you think would be different this time, and who do you think American voters actually really want in the White House? Are there any indications of what direction it's headed?
I'll be very careful until the very last day of the election itself to make any predictions. And the national polls at this moment are very unreliable because the system just doesn't work this way because of the Electoral College and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, I think what we are seeing is that Trump is playing a similar election campaign as a few years back. At least in terms of themes. His big point is that the border isn't safe, that somehow there is chaos, and that there are too many immigrants. So basically, he's trying to paint a threat scenario. But what we are witnessing is a radicalization, I think, in the tone. He has spoken of his political opponents as vermin. He has used basically fascist rhetoric to speak of the poisoning of the blood of the country. So there is a radicalization, and I think in part it's due to his own position. He is facing multiple trials, and if he doesn't become reelected, he is under a lot of personal pressure. For Biden, he is also facing some challenges. On the one hand, the young vote has turned away from him in part because of his position on Israel and Palestine. Another thing is that a lot of his investments in infrastructure and so on have long-term effects. And so it would be important for him to articulate his successes more clearly.
Boris, don't go anywhere, because we're going to hear now from Trump. Now, Trump's America First approach left deep scars here in Europe. That's left many wondering what a second Trump term might mean for the alliance, especially with regards to NATO at a time when a war is raging here in Europe. So here's what Donald Trump said when he was asked about that last night.
There's a real concern what a second Trump term would mean. Would you be committed to NATO, for example, in a second Trump term?
Depends if they treat us properly. The reason they have money right now to prosecute what they're doing with helping Ukraine is because of the money I got them. So, peace through strength.
All right, Boris, so if you were a European leader, would you be taking a different approach, or are they already preparing for a second Trump term?
You can certainly witness in public discourses, in newspaper articles and so on, that in the last couple of weeks, people are becoming more and more aware that a second Trump administration is a true possibility, and that there are very strong security risks implied for Europe. Some countries have been stepping up their defense spending. Still, most countries are far away from the 2% investment of GDP that they're supposed to invest in NATO. We know that there has been a longer-term shift away from the global liberal order, international relations are much more zero-sum. So yes, European leaders have to step up their game. And the question is if they can do so in just a few months. Boris Pistorius, the German defense minister, has said it takes about 5 to 8 years to catch up. So I think this is the big debate that has to be had in Europe.
I'm sure we'll be talking about this a lot over the next several months. Thanks, Boris. Boris Foreman, US politics expert.